So Chapter 5 Season 4 is just about 2 weeks away now, and that season is heavily rumored to be another Marvel season. And of course, with our first Marvel season, we got the introduction of the Marvel superpowers. There are actually 12 of them. And today I wanted to take a trip back in time in preparation for Chapter 5 Season 4 and rank every single Marvel superpower from worst to best. Remember, this is not every single Marvel mythic, this is just the Marvel superpowers, specifically most of them from Chapter 2 Season 4. If you guys go on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop if you would like to show some support for my channel. Thanks to everybody who has been using my code over the last couple months. It is a huge help. You guys are awesome. With all that being said, finally, let's just get right into this ranking. And at the number 12 spot, the worst Marvel superpower in Fortnite history, that is Black Panther's kinetic armor. Look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. This thing is known pretty much to be one of the worst Marvel superpowers, and I would agree with that. Basically, how this thing worked is it had like a main ability, right, which created an armor which reduces the damage that you take for 20 seconds, right? So sounds decent. But the secondary ability is essentially useless. Basically, afterwards, the armor will explode, which causes damage to structures and players while knocking them back. That's basically useless. In my opinion, it's just not enough, right? It's just not worth carrying over the other 11 mythics on this list. There was no spot in your inventory with a season with an absolutely loaded loot pool like Chapter 2 Season 4. It's just not enough, doesn't do anything insanely well, and for that reason, it is last place on this list. And at the number 11 spot, and definitely you could make an argument that this should be the worst, it is Storm's Whirlwind Blast. And wow, I will be honest with you, I forgot how bad this thing was. After I watched gameplay, I mean, I was just sitting there like, who would ever take this thing? It is legitimately good for one thing and one thing only. That is if you are at a high surface where you can kill somebody to fall damage, you pop this ability, it'll basically blast them off the build and onto the ground, making them die from fall damage. That is legitimately 100% the only time you will ever use Storm's Whirlwind Blast. It does 0 damage, and all it does is just build up a storm around the player, and then it basically just pushes them back. It's essentially just a different version of an impulse grenade. That's it. It's really just a reskin impulse grenade, and impulse grenades are not great. We all know that, and for that reason, yeah, bottom of the list. At the number 10 spot is Wolverine's Claws, and I think this one is going to be a little bit controversial. These claws were not great, but the one thing that I will give them is they are incredibly versatile. The claws have multiple attacks. They allow you to do like a spin slash, which does damage to players and structures. You also have an air dash where you can dash forward with them. I believe you also ran faster with them when you had them equipped, and you also have a dodge ability, so a lot of things you could do with this. They also let you heal 2 health per second outside of the storm, so yeah, a lot of really good abilities here. And I'll be honest with you, I really hate to do this to these claws, but I really have to knock it so far down because of how hard it was to get these things. They could only be obtained by eliminating Wolverine in that Weeping Woods slash like Slurpy Swamp area. That is it. To my knowledge, there was only one set of Wolverine's claws on the entire map. And let me tell you, I hope the gameplay shows it, but eliminating Wolverine was an absolute disaster. This dude would heal his health. He was absolutely loaded on health and shield. You're just asking to get third-partied when you shoot this guy. And he can actually revive himself. So let's say you run out of ammo or something when you knock him, or you're reloading when he's knocked. He will actually revive himself back to health and continue to attempt to kill you. If these things just dropped out of like the Stark drones, I would put them a lot higher on this list, but for how hard they are to get, how rare they were on the map, not worth it in my opinion. And at the number 9 spot is another melee weapon, right back to back, is She-Hulk's fists. And I'll be honest with you, during Chapter 2 Season 4, I was not a big fan of She-Hulk's fists, but after watching some gameplay and reading some more comments and looking back on this thing, I actually think it's a little bit better than I gave it credit for. Look, don't be mistaken, I don't think it's great at all, and there are basically 8 other superpowers that I would take over this thing, but it's decent. These fists basically allowed you to repeatedly melee people and basically build up a combo, so that increases damage per hit, all the way up to 4 times, right? So you could hit somebody once and do 40 damage, then hit them twice and do 55, then do a third time and get plus 70, and do times 4 and get plus 100. So you can easily kill somebody with 200 health if you can combo all 4 of those hits together. You also had a leap smash, which basically dealt an area of damage where the players lands. You had a power leap, which like was a mini impulse grenade. It launches you into the air. You had a dodge ability, all similar to Wolverine's ability. You also had a healing effect, just like Wolverine's, right? So what makes me put this ahead of Wolverine's superpower is basically just the fact that these things were so much more common. You could get these by dropping randomly after destroying a Stark supply drone. And those things were everywhere. They were all around the Quinjets, they were at Stark Industries. It was not hard to get your hands on a pair of She-Hulk's fists, and for that reason, it is better than Wolverine's claws. At the number 8 spot is Thor's Mjolnir Strike, and I have a feeling some people are going to be upset at this. Look, Thor's Mjolnir Strike is just a glorified reskin version of a Junk Rift. There's no other way to put it. That is exactly how it is. And this is another item similar to She-Hulk's fist that would only drop after destroying Stark supply drones. That was the only way to get your hands on it. And like I said earlier, it basically just acted like a Junk Rift. You would aim the hammer where you want it to come down, you would press it, and the hammer would come down, just destroying any builds in front of it, wrecking anything, and it would do 60 damage to anyone inside that like blast radius. So it's safe to say that this thing absolutely thrived on players that were in 1x1s. The problem is, other than that, this thing is kind of useless. If someone's in the open, you're never going to use this thing. If you're fighting somebody one-on-one, you're really never going to use this thing. The only time you're going to use it is if you do 180, 190 damage to somebody, they box up to heal, you pop this thing on top of their box, and they're dead. It really thrives in endgame because the cooldown was only 25 seconds, so the longer you survived, you essentially could just have unlimited Junk Rifts, right? Which is so good because you can just keep destroying build after build after build as that zone gets smaller and smaller, so really, really helpful there. It's not an incredible item by any means, but it's definitely not terrible. At the number 7 spot is Venom Smash and Grab, and yeah, this one is going to ruffle some feathers for sure. Because I know how popular this weapon is and how many people love to have fun with this weapon. I mean, you could literally just rip anybody out of their box. You just press it on them, it grabs them and just brings them towards you, as the name suggests, of course. And it is really fun to use. I'm not going to deny that. Just ripping anybody out of wherever they are and bring them right in front of you. Yeah, that's cool. But the reason why it's in kind of like the bottom 50% of this list is mainly because of the skill gap that it takes to use this thing. If you give a low skill player the Venom Smash and Grab, they will not be able to do anything with it. But if you give somebody, specifically a high skill player who knows what they're doing with this thing, they can thrive. I will say, I just don't like how this weapon is basically dependent on having another weapon to make it good, right? If you think about it, you basically need a shotgun or a high fire rate weapon like an SMG for this thing to be good, right? Because you're going to pull them right in front of your face. You can't really run this thing with like a slow firing AR or a sniper, for example. It's just not going to work. And one of the main reasons why this thing is just so good is because you can pull players out of their box unexpectedly, right? It's not that loud. There's no like time to react. You can't really hear this thing coming towards you, and all of a sudden you have to adjust. You can get totally caught off guard by a good player who knows what they're doing, and for that reason, I think it's okay, but I think it's like only really good in a very few amount of the player base's hands. Other than that, I don't think it's great. But anyways, at the number 6 spot is Dr. Doom's Mystical Bomb. And look, when we're looking at this thing, take off those rose-tinted glasses, take off the nostalgia glasses, because this thing is not as good as you remember it. I think in Chapter 2, Season 4, this thing got a lot of love and was regarded as one of the best, if my memory serves me correct at least. And look, I'm definitely not hating on it. I mean, it is in the top 50% of this list, basically. But I mean, think about it. You hold this giant ball above your head, so you become totally exposed, right? I mean, there's no way around it. You hold this thing, you have to throw it outside of your box. Your whole body has to be outside of the box. But the advantage of that is once you are able to safely throw that ball, it does good damage. It does 60 damage, and it also gets the fire effect, which is huge, right? That's an underrated aspect. Now, fire doesn't really do anything, but back then, fire used to spread like, no pun intended, literally a wildfire. If you threw this at a house, you could burn the entire house down. It also deals damage on impact, right? You don't have to wait like a grenade for it to explode. It's just whatever it hits, it explodes just like that. And one of the key aspects that a lot of people forget about is that this thing actually cannot hurt the player who threw it. You can take this thing, throw it at your feet, and you cannot do damage to yourself. This weapon, of course, is best paired with something like a shockwave grenade where you can just be above somebody and just rain hellfire basically on them with this thing. I do remember this thing being really good for competitive, especially. I think people would like throw it at the corner of the box and it would destroy the whole box, and you could easily either get in somebody's box or take their wall. And since you can't damage yourself using it, you are able to use it at extreme close ranges. It also is unlimited. You can use this as many times as you want, just like Thor's Mjolnir Strike. As long as you just wait for that cooldown, you can use it as many times as you want throughout the entire game. It's decent, not great, not terrible, and that's why there are 5 more mythics ahead of it. And one of those at the number 5 spot is Silver Surfer's Board. I don't think that this thing got the love it deserved when it was in the game, but after seeing items like the Nimbus Cloud, which are essentially just Silver Surfer's Board, and seeing how much love items like that get, Silver Surfer's Board deserves more attention, positive attention. I mean, this thing is literally the Witch's Broom, and people were absolutely glazing the Witch's Broom towards the end of Chapter 4, so even if you haven't used this specific weapon, if you've used either of the previous items I just mentioned, you know how this thing works. works. You just get launched upwards into the direction you're facing, and you can cancel it, which is huge. You get instant glider redeploy, and you will get no fall damage if you decide to cancel it while you're gliding. It's really just great for everything you need to do, right? If you want to jump into a fight, you want to basically have your own portable launch pad, yeah, go do that. If you want to exit a fight, just pop it and get out. Or if you just want to reposition, you were getting shot at and you needed to get on high ground, just pop this thing and get above them. It was that good. And it could also be found in Stark drones, so that whole loot pool, and so that means it was relatively common. But it is not the best mobility we will see on this list. Hint, hint. At the number 4 spot, though, are Doctor Doom's Arcane Gauntlets, and yes, I do think that these are the better of the Doctor Doom mythics. And honestly, totally unrelated, but now that I think about it, I just saw Robert Downey Jr. get revealed as Victor Von Doom for like the new Doctor Doom movies, so I wonder if we will see a Doctor Doom collab in Chapter 5 Season 4. But these Arcane Gauntlets are so good for so many reasons. First of all, there was no cooldown, or at least for the Arcane Gauntlet attack, you could infinitely put pressure, you had infinite ammo on these things whenever you wanted. That is so strong, at least on the Arcane Gauntlet attack. The Arcane Gauntlet jump, there was only a 5-second cooldown, and basically you would get a 2-tile jump boost, basically like a double jump. And these Arcane Gauntlets didn't do like baby damage, they were doing 35 damage. That is scar damage right there. They had a pretty big blast radius, but they aren't the best gauntlets on this list. With that being said though, even though they're not the best, they are still a very good choice in Chapter 2 Season 4, and definitely one of the best superpowers for sure. At the number 3 spot, and I hinted at this just a couple minutes ago, that is Groot's Bramble Shield. And before Iron Man's Unibeam came out, this thing was basically known to be the number 1 best superpower the entire season. It was actually overpowered, it got nerfed a couple times. It was even taken out of the game for a pretty decent amount of time due to some bug issues. It was introduced, of course, with the Chapter 2 Season 4 update V14.0, but it was vaulted in update V14.40 and didn't come back until update V14.6. And take a shot if you've heard me say this before in this video, this was only available after destroying Stark supply drones. That's the only way that you could get them, similar to like 3 or 4 items I've already mentioned. And this is a really unique item, and if you don't know how it works, let me explain. Basically, when you use it, you end up becoming covered in a ball of brambles, hence the name, which blocks up to 200 damage. The ball also rolls faster than the player's sprint speed, and it's unlimited, right? So you have great mobility here, incredible mobility. Well, it's not entirely unlimited. It heals the player 3 times before the ball dismantles. It also blocks fall damage while you're inside of it, and you can roll the ball into a structure to deal damage to it. I mean, at this point, it's like, what can't you do with this thing, right? Yes, of course, most people used it for its healing properties and its mobility properties, but I remember like being in endgame, and if you were like hiding behind a tree or something, just pop this thing, someone would turn the corner and they couldn't do damage to you. You were protected by the shield. And it's not like you were protected from only one angle, right? Like something like the riot shield or something, the player can jump over you and shoot you from behind. No, this thing, you were covered, full 360 angle, you were covered. But I mentioned its healing properties. This thing healed 20 health every 2 seconds for 3 uses, so 60 health in 6 seconds. That is really good. That's 10 health a second. I honestly don't have many complaints about it. The cooldown time is also only 25 seconds, so for the game, you basically get unlimited white heals, you get unlimited mobility, and you get like an unlimited shield. It's crazy, honestly. But there are 2 more superpowers ahead of it, and at that number 2 spot is Iron Man's Repulsor Gauntlets. And I remember the absolute craze when these things came out. They had aimbot. That was the big thing. And I'm not joking, actually. If you go onto the Fortnite wiki, it literally says the gauntlet allows the player to shoot laser projectiles towards the enemy, which have a soft aimbot function, which guides them towards a player at certain ranges. And you might think that is OP, and yes, while it was very strong, the way they countered it is by lowering damage. This thing only did 20 damage. But besides like that aimbot feature, you also had a boost jump, so every 20 seconds you could jump a second time to gain altitude, right? And you could hover in the air, which canceled all fall damage. But let's be honest, everybody just used this for the aimbot effect. And people definitely did use this thing. I mean, it was dropped by Iron Man at Stark Industries, which we all know was 100% the most popular POI that entire season, so these things were highly sought after. I think these things become incredibly good, especially when you pair them with another item. Once you're able to get above somebody and they have no idea where like your missiles are coming from, you're able to just lock on, just keep hovering in the air, and just destroy them. It's that simple. I think these things were incredible. Even though they had been nerfed a couple times, I still think they're very good, and I would like to see them come back in Chapter 5 Season 4. But they are not the best Iron Man superpower in Chapter 2 Season 4. That would go to Iron Man's Unibeam, which is our number 1 spot on this list. I honestly don't think there's any argument here. I have talked about how much I like the Unibeam in the past past. It is such a stark difference, no pun intended there, you see what I did, between the number 1 spot and the rest of this list. This thing was no doubt, when I was making this list and I was typing up the list in a document, this thing was absolutely number 1 right away. And this thing was entirely the precursor to the railgun. You may not have ever used this thing, but if you use the railgun, you know what the unibeam does. If you were lucky enough to walk out of Stark Industries with the unibeam and the repulsor gauntlets, you were basically unstoppable for the entire game. There was nobody that was going to take you down. And there is one key aspect here which basically separates the unibeam from everything, and that is because it would shoot the laser, which by the way does 90 damage, but it would shoot it through 2 layers of structures, not just one. So everybody knows to counter the railgun, you would place a wall and then you would place a stair, because the railgun would only go through 1 structure, but this would go through 2. So even if you were behind a wall and a stair, you could still be hit by the unibeam. So really, you didn't have enough time once somebody popped this thing to build 3 layers of walls. You were basically going to get instant hit. And it's basically like getting hit with a sniper shot. 90 damage is nothing to scoffle about. That is really good. While it did have a cooldown of 35 seconds, which is the longest of any of the superpowers on this list, you can see why they had to do that. But even though there is a cooldown, it is unlimited. So you did have an unlimited railgun for the entire game. And for all of the aforementioned reasons, and even more than I'm sure I'm forgetting, the unibeam is the number 1 spot on this list. It's the best Marvel superpower of all time. So yeah, guys, that is my list for basically ranking every single Marvel superpower. Let me know how you thought I did ranking this, what you would change, what you would keep, and if we do get more superpowers added in Chapter 5 Season 4, and it does end up being a Marvel-themed season, I will actually remake this list, or just rank all the new ones by themselves, who knows. Let's just get some new superpowers first. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave it a like, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.